evening. Welcome.
Wait.
Oh.
It's preparing to live stream. It hasn't started live streaming. You all for being so patient.
I know. I need a little earbud or something so somebody can talk to me in my ear. Hey, Chris, are you on a separate phone?
No. Well, what's wrong?
No, there's another phone showing up, a 242 number. Who is that? Do we know?
This is Gerald Allen.
Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Hey, AJ looks good.
Yes.
Chris, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. You look good too.
That's the best those two guys have looked in a while.
Okay, Darlene, are we good? Well, we're going to start and assume we are. So, good evening.
Yes.
Great. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Greater Tuscaloosa's Meet Your Legislators event. The University of Alabama Retirees Association, also known as TWARA, is a co-sponsor. Tonight, we are live on YouTube. Recordings of this event may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-video of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by the media reporting on the event. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy.
Kim, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
There's a lag, and I'm not sure what it is.
What does that mean?
Do you hear your own voice still talking?
No. I mean, there's always a
Okay.
lag.
There's
There's always a lag. That's how the
Okay.
live goes. Yeah.
there's always a lag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. There will be
All
a
right.
lag. Okay. All right.
Sorry about that. Start again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. All right. So I think now we're ready to introduce the members of our delegation who are in attendance. I'm going to put it back on gallery view for right now. Maybe I can. Maybe I can't. No. There. All right. Okay. We have from the 63rd District, Representative Cynthia Almond. From the 70th District, Representative Chris England. From the 21st District, Senator Gerald Allen. From the 71st District, Representative AJ McCampbell. And from the 16th District, Representative Kyle South. So thank you all for joining us and for bearing with us through our few little technical problems that we're having. Okay, so I thought tonight I would start with going around to each of you and asking you to choose one hot topic for this session. So if you had to pick one of your hot topic, what is it and why? I'm going to go back to gallery view because that's not working. And I'm just going to go across as I see them. So Cynthia, I'm going to start with you. I know she's on her phone, so it's more difficult to manipulate. We'll go to Kyle, and then we'll go back to Cynthia. So Kyle, if you had to pick one, what's your hot topic for this session?
So I think the overwhelming theme of the session, unlike what we've experienced in the past, is going to be more of a focus on the budget for the first time, definitely in my tenure. There is a significant surplus in both budgets, along with ARPA funds that are yet to be allocated through the federal government. So we're looking at supplemental budgets, in both sides, both the general fund and the education trust fund, all totaling somewhere around $3.8 billion that we will allocate additionally this year than what we did last year. So I think that's going to be the focus, how we use those dollars to invest in future generations, because this is a generational once in a lifetime type opportunity, and how we use those dollars for those investments and what that looks like for the future, I think will be the biggest theme of the session.
Okay. All right. Mr. McCampbell, what about you?
I think probably I would say the charter school bill and the act that was passed some years ago. That's going to be a hot topic this year because everybody is talking about critical race theory and all of these things that these are issues that we're going to have to deal with. And so I think that's going to be one. I have a bill. One of the things that's in that charter school bill was to develop something to identify the bottom 6% of the schools in the state as failing schools. And the problem with that is that term failing has a negative connotation, not only when you're trying to encourage people to do better, but it also has a negative connotation when we are out trying to recruit industry to come to Alabama. So we passed the Numeracy Act and the Literacy Act, and in those acts, we described those schools that were not performing as, let's see, what is that term? I think it's I said the bottom 6% or the 94%, and the other term is unsupported and supported schools. So I have a couple of bills, and we can choose whichever one we like, but I like the supported and unsupported schools terminology. So that bill has already been pre-filed.
Okay, excellent. All right, Senator Allen, what about you? What's your hot topic for this session?
I would think falling behind AJ and a little bit about what Cal was speaking about the budgets, but the one important part of the whole program in terms of recruiting industry is the Jobs Act. In other words, growing Alabama tax credit renewal, if that's going to be in play, that's something that we've got to do because it sunsets in July. And that's the Jobs Act is the state's main industry recruiting tool. And that's important because we want to continue, because we have done quite well. The governor and the Secretary Canfield has done extremely well and in recruiting industry, and we must renew that Jobs Act so we can continue. And of course, the Jobs Act is a performance-based tax incentive that provides income credits for qualified business people and companies, and based on new jobs and investments created. So the Jobs Act is important because, as you know, we have seen companies come to Alabama simply because the incentive that we as a state has offered. And for us to be able to do that, and then of course, I think workforce development goes hand in hand with that as well. So those two items, in my opinion, are the big ticket items for this state and for each of us to address in this session coming up.
Okay, excellent. All right, Representative Almond, are you ready?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm going to stay unmuted and video on, and I'll try to be quiet. So when I looked the other day, there really weren't that many bills that had been pre-filed, so we're not exactly certain what is coming. But one of the things I've heard about is school choice in terms of hot topics, and I definitely think that will be one for us if it comes to us, and I think that it will. Certainly some strong opinions for and against, even within the same party. So I think that should be an interesting debate.
Okay, great. And Representative England, what's yours?
I was going to try to pick something that I don't ever talk about. But no, I mean, since everybody took all the good stuff, obviously, with all the changes in our criminal justice system, I think that's going to be a big topic. We've got some emerging crisis level issues to deal with in our criminal justice system, and I think you'll see several pieces of legislation introduced to deal with things like an aging, expensive population in our prison system that is it's commanding a large amount of resources and making it difficult for us to manage that population. I think you'll also see, quite frankly, a push in the opposite direction, because of some things that happened recently. I know we've all watched the prisoner release and how poorly that went. So I think that's going to create some knee-jerk reaction from some people about, either slowing it down or stopping it. And you'll probably see some other things that kind of push us in the opposite direction, dealing with Class D felonies and trying to get rid of those or at least limit their use. And also, you've already seen a package introduced by the governor's office to deal with good time, accruing good time while you're incarcerated. But also, the Attorney General has introduced a couple of bills, both in the House and the Senate, to change the good time accrual calculation, which is basically an inmate's ability to either accrue good time based on good behavior or to lose it based on bad behavior. So again, I think you'll see a lot of discussion about the criminal justice system on both sides of the spectrum.
Okay, all right. Excellent. Those are all excellent topics and a great way to get us started. So as you know, the League is all about voting and voting rights and access to voting, and that is a topic that we strongly advocate for. So in this session, do you see any effort, any bills have been introduced, or do you anticipate any bills coming that would advance voting rights in our state, such as expanding absentee voting, same-day voter registration, those kinds of things? And I'll start with Mr. McCampbell this time.
I don't know why you wanted to start with me, because I don't see anything like that coming, period. So I'll let everybody else chime in.
All right. Mr. South, what about you? Do you think we'll see anything like that?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with AJ on that. There have been some minor, modifications here and there, but I don't see any major shift in how voting is done in the state as we progress into this session. I know there were a lot of voting bills last session that went more in the other direction than those that you mentioned, and I think we'll see fewer of those this time, but I don't think there's going to be a big push to kind of structurally change the way we vote in the state.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything about that? No.
Yes, let me, there's going to be, I know, two bills in the Senate that deals with to stay with the paper ballot. And although it's it's a rule already in the state as far as in the Secretary of State's office, but it's not in the code. So we're going to see that bill come up, and then at the same time you're going. I don't know the details on it, but there's going to be another piece that's some way or another not let our voting system be involved in electronics and transmitting votes. And so those two bills will be coming.
Okay, good. That's good to know. All right. Let's move to education. So I'm going to kind of combine two questions that I received. One was from Tuara, but it was very similar to another question I have. And it's about the Education Trust Fund for retirees that was created 2 years ago, but has yet to be funded. Do you have any updates on that? What are the prospects of that being funded? You talked about, Mr. South, you talked about the budget surpluses that we have. Do you anticipate any of that money going towards that? That could be used as an incentive in recruitment and retention of teachers, and in helping some teachers who just to struggle with their retirement income, paying for their, a living wage, so to speak.
Yeah. So I haven't heard any talk about using those dollars necessarily for that. We talked about gaming legislation a couple of years ago, and in that conversation, there was talk about a consistent revenue source to fill that need. But as far as dedicating a revenue stream going forward, which is what we would be looking for something like that, rather than just shifting one-time monies over into there, I don't think we're quite there yet. Conversations still being had, bonuses, those kinds of things, salary increases. But I think also, as far as the recruitment of teachers, there's a constant look in a bill or bills filed each and every year looking at tier 1, tier 2, how modifications need to be made to that in order to keep our teachers in the classroom as long as we can, keep good teachers around, but also incentivize young people to going into the field. So it's a constant, look back and how those things are done and how other states are doing it, and comparing ourselves and meeting those goals to give our educators the every incentive to be in the classroom, because it's not an easy job these days.
Let me throw a couple of points in on Cal has brought up a very good point. The critical shortages of math and science and technology type instructors and teachers. As you know, we passed a piece of legislation last year that those individuals can earn up to $20,000 more in the classroom, in which that has shown some very positive results. And as Kyle mentioned, trying to find new ways to encourage current established teachers to continue their career in education. And I think this is one method that we have done last year to create this $20,000 for those science and technology and math teachers. And so that's encouraging to see. And also looking at the possibilities of principals and assistant principals getting a little bit better pay, a salary increase, a scale will be established to figure out exactly how that's going to work, but certainly to be creative and try to figure out how can we keep current administrators and student teachers, classroom teachers to continue their career in education. That's critical for us.
I might add, Senator Allen and I were in an education trust fund budget hearing today, and this is my first meeting on that committee, so I know very little, but I will add that along those lines, what we heard today, Senator Allen, was that for the first time, we really do not have a shortage of math and science teachers in our state, thanks to the incentives that have been put in over the last few years. We have shortages in other areas, particularly special education, but we've made great progress in getting those critical teachers in math and science.
That's
Right.
good news. So,
Yes. Yes. One other item I like to bring out is the resource officers in our facilities, in our schools. And that's something that we're going to really take a good look at, and, you know, from a committee standpoint. And for instance, like I'm going to use a county school system here. For instance, like the Brookwood High School. Got Brookwood High School, Brookwood Middle, Brookwood Elementary, Vance Elementary, and Lakeview, and they have one resource officer. And the Tuscaloosa County Commission pays for 5 of those resource officers, and then of course the state pays and those other 6. So we have a total of 11. And I can tell you, for instance, like in other counties, there's 1 or 2 counties that does not even have any resource officers for some reason or other, although the budget does fund the superintendent's offices to be able to have some form of fashion type of resource officers. So we're going to take a good hard look at this program, because there's nothing more important than having an officer on campus, and to making sure that not only our students but our faculty and administrators are safe. And that's in my opinion, that's a priority as well.
so you're looking at putting specific funding in for that in a
Adding.
line
I
item?
would say to take a look at the numbers and adding some more dollars to that, because it's pretty obvious that it's not only a Tuscaloosa County issue, but it's a statewide issue as well.
Okay. All right. So circling back a little bit to the Education Trust Fund for retirees, if I understood what you said correctly, is you're looking for a revenue stream to continuously fund that, such as the lottery. Is that what you were saying? So you don't want to use any of the budget surplus because that could go away?
It obviously we're looking further down the road, and those surpluses won't be there in future years out. Next year may be a little bit different story, but a couple of years down the road, we're already seeing receipts kind of drop within the state. Don't really know what to expect. So yes, we need a sustainable funding source if we're going to go down that road. And again, we talked about certain pots of funds within gaming or the lottery or those kinds of things to help, contribute to that type of account. So I don't know where we will be on that topic, and I'm sure it will come up tonight, but
well, that's a good segue. We'll just jump right into that question, because last year we did talk about that, and you all felt really strongly that the lottery would come up, that it would be brought forth. And so where are we on that? Who wants to jump in on that topic? Because this is, I feel like every year, we're kind of anticipating, and it just never happens. So kind of where do we stand with that?
who wants to go first?
Well, I could say this, and then I'll let Kyle take it from there. But last year, the House, and correct me if I'm incorrect, Kyle, and others, but did pass a straight lottery bill late in the session and sent it to the Senate, and it did not make it out of the Senate. So we did get that far, as I recall. But as to what will come up this year, I'll let others speak to that.
I mean, we sort of passed one, it almost caused a fist fight on those last nights of the session. But this is going to sound a little contradictory, but I'll explain it. We're probably further away from passing a lottery bill, but I also think that we're closer in reality, meaning that I don't think we'll pass something this session, but I think some of the external forces that used to be a rather large impediment to passing gaming legislation is in such a state of flux now that it might loosen up a little bit for more negotiation. With what's going on with several of formerly established facilities like in Greene County and in Lowndes County or in Macon County, when those are in flux, like I said, it may create an opportunity for some negotiating. So I think that we probably won't see anything this session, but we'll probably have more fruitful conversations than we've ever had in terms of gaming legislation going forward, and possibly see something before the next election, before we put something on the ballot, probably before the next election or at the next election.
So I would agree with Chris on that. I think we're further away, but there's more serious conversation going in and around gaming at this point. And I think a lot of what plays into that is we've got 31 new members in the House. There's going to be a period of educating members, and especially with it's been hard for me to even wrap my mind around all the interests that come to the table when you start talking about gaming. And so it's not just as simple as a lottery. It's, everybody wants to pile into that space. And so I think that's the case. I also think that nobody is in a huge hurry because I don't think anybody has the appetite for a special election on that. And so the next time a general election comes around is 2 years from now. So we would have this year and next year to get something put together that maybe would be appealing to the voters of the state.
Okay, well, that's a good update. Does anybody else want to have any comment on that topic? Okay, all right. So going back to education, and this might have something to do with the budget surplus that you could discuss, but Governor Ivey highlighted that students have decreased reading and math scores in those areas. And so what, if anything, do you see the legislature doing to support her efforts to improve students' abilities in reading and math? Is there funding for doing anything as well?
That's what the Numeracy and the Literacy Act were about. And those, we did see some statistics. There is some movement, positive movement from the investments that we've made in those areas. So I do see the legislature continuing to fund those areas, because the pandemic took us, a year or two behind, put us a year or two behind. So yeah, I do see those areas continuing to be funded. May even see some increase in those areas.
And so would that include funding for the Alabama Reading Initiative?
Yes, that's the reading initiative as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to piggyback a little bit on AJ's comments there. So we've made some very good strides even in the national rankings. But I think some of those, I mean, we want to pat ourselves on the back a little bit, but at the same time, we got to take a step back and look at the data as a whole. Part of that increase in our scores was the fact that we stayed kind of the same during the pandemic while others fell off. So we want to set that bar higher, not against everybody else, but against ourselves, and try to be the best. And to AJ's point also, even on the math investments that we've made, some of that funding doesn't kick in until this summer, kind of summer school type programs and those kinds of things don't kick in until this year. So there's increased funding that will come along with that. And we hope to continue on the kind of trajectory that we're on right now.
Anyone else have a comment? Senator Allen? Anybody?
I'll just say in our,
Yeah, go ahead, Cynthia.
I was just going to add, in our Education Trust Fund hearing today, they talked a good bit about that, and there are several documents that posted on the website that people can go and look at and see the statistics for themselves. But they were quite impressive, that the gains that have been made. And again, not where we want to be, but I think at least it looks like we're headed in the right direction, which is good.
And I would have to agree with that. And I'm not real sure, Cal, you may be able to help me with this, but 2 or 3 budget years ago, for some reason or another, we did not fund the reading initiative like we should have. And we are paying a real huge penalty for that, because we're playing catch up. And so Cynthia's right. If there's going to be a good, solid budget number to sustain and keep moving the program forward, so that's you can look forward to that to happen.
Okay, good. All right, let's pivot to criminal justice. Representative England mentioned it as his hot topic. And so what progress will the legislature pursue in this session to address the problems associated with the prison system? What do you know anything specifically? Has anything been pre-filed? Do you know of any specific plans? And an additional question is, I'm wondering if any of you have visited a prison or ever attended a parole hearing. So you can kind of answer that as you go around too. So Representative England, I don't know if you'd like to start, since that was your hot topic.
I'll start here. Yes, I've visited a few prisons. I visited Tutwiler. I visited actually Ingram. I think we went as a group to check that out. And I've also been to a parole here. I've been to a few. And I do think that we'll see some positive movement in trying to identify populations within our prison system that would be better served in other settings rather than being incarcerated. Like as I mentioned earlier, there's a large growth, whether a population that's aging, sick, infirmed, that are very expensive to take care of. And I think there has been a lot of positive discussions about finding a better way to take care of those individuals. I think it's not a secret. We're getting ready to, if the governor hasn't already signed, a massive prison healthcare contract with a company that used to be called Corizon, now it's called Yes Care. That actually Corizon was our previous to our current Wexford was our previous healthcare provider that left us with a massive problem. They left and we went with Wexford, and we haven't really seen much improvement, which is why we went with, I guess, Yes Care. But there's really no way to say that we're going to pay $1 billion over 4 years, knowing that the parole board doesn't really release anyone. People are getting older, they're getting sicker, and believe that by the time that 4-year contract is up, with that the rising cost of healthcare is not going to just create the same problem that we've had before, where it's just not enough money to take care of all those folks. So we've got to figure out another way to do it. And for me, I think the best way to do it is to find those folks that are, again, better served outside the facility, that are not a threat to public safety, and put them in a situation where somebody else can take care of them and pay for it. Meanwhile, saving us money within the system where we can actually use it for rehabilitation, resocialization, and actually creating space within our system for people who really, really need it, who really need to be there. So I do believe there's going to be some positive movement in that direction. There's a lot of discussion in both the House and the Senate on both sides of the aisle to try to figure out a way to do that. I'm also have introduced several bills, pre-filed several bills to deal with different components of our criminal justice system. One that tries to create oversight for the parole board. Just as a casual observer, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, you can look at that and say that it is not working as it should. Just recently, for example, a 71-year-old woman who's on dialysis 3 times a week, who's in a wheelchair, went before the parole, and who is not a threat to public safety, who's been in over 20 years, who had people willing to take care of her. The parole board denied her application and then set it off for 5 years. So she's either going to die in prison or she's going to serve 5 more years, and we're going to pay for every single bit of her health care. Again, that's taking away a spot from somebody who probably really needs it, and taking away money from a system that needs that money as well. So I do think you'll see some positive movement in that direction. As far as everything else, I think you've seen the Attorney General's office. You've seen some bills already pre-filed that are kind of pushing back on any sort of other reform. But I think we'll still talk about it, though, because, I mean, if I'm just the only person doing it, that means somebody's talking about it. So I'm going to introduce legislation that deals with the parole board, that deals with the death penalty, and related topics.
Okay. Cynthia,
Let me also add
yes.
that Chris has made some very good points, and I visited 3 of the correction facilities, Cutweiler and Ingram as well, and it's not a very pretty sight to see. But recently, as you may recall, we had a prison release program set up, and as you know, there was some blowback on that, which I was one of 7 senators that voted against that piece, because I felt like that there wasn't much thought put into the piece of legislation that was passed. And although I do agree that, like Chris alluded to several times, is that there are certain individuals in our system that have served time, and for some health reasons or whatever the case may be, we need to look carefully on how we can exit those individuals and send them home, let their relatives take care of them. And so anyway, I do appreciate the work that's being done, although the new prison site, the site preparation has been completed, I think, and construction will start pretty quickly. And although it's a lot of questions yet to be answered.
So I would like to focus on a couple of other areas of criminal justice and DOC and those kinds of things, in that, one of the biggest things highlighted in the federal court system as it's come through and the findings and those kinds of things is staffing issues. And I think that we have budgeted some dollars to increase correction officer pay to try to recruit and retain correction officers. I think that's one of the things that we may not be able to quantify with new facilities is the ability to recruit new officers to more secure locations. And so that's one of the things, and I know the state personnel board has that on their agenda for this next month to kind of increase that bottom end of correction officer pay. And hopefully I'm wanting to say at one time we were like 1,500 correction officers short. I think I saw something the other day that even that may have been the federal judge's estimate. I think even our estimate we're about 700 or 800 short. So we've got a ways to go, and that number hasn't really changed. We're hiring left and right, but the net number is not changing much. So we've got to do something to kind of turn that around.
And I want to just kind of add to that too. One thing that Kyle mentioned about staffing, the interesting thing about that is that we haven't had a net gain. Employment costs, we did what I think a couple of years ago increased compensation for COs. We also created an additional position that's not APO certified or S certified, but can operate in a quasi capacity where they can't necessarily arrest, but they can supervise, like they can operate certain within certain areas within our prison system and try to ease some of the lack of personnel. But interestingly enough, as our numbers are dropping, the cost of operating our prison system is still going up. We are bleeding money in that system, and I'm not suggesting the Department of Corrections is unique. I think every single agency that came before the general fund this year is asking for an additional appropriation. But there really isn't any connection or correlation between a cost increase in the Department of Corrections and any better result. And I think as we watch conditions continue to worsen, staffing levels continue to drop, and also we still have a significant issue with a culture of corruption within the facilities, where we still have a significant drug problem that is proliferating throughout the system. It's still violent. It's still dangerous. We still lack mental health care. We've got to figure out a way to take the dollars that we're spending and actually spend them in a more effective and efficient way to start addressing some of those issues. And, Senator Allen mentioned that we're building a prison, and we have a site prepared, but we're still 3 to 4 years off of having a actual new facility built. So that means that we have to have some sort of plan to deal with this crisis from now until they come online. Because at some point, the judge, in that case, Judge Thompson, is going to ask us, what has changed since the last time we talked? And if we don't have an answer better than we're just kind of sitting here waiting on prisons to be built, we're likely going to end up in a receivership where the judge decides, okay, if you can't do it, then I'm going to have to. And that's going to be prohibitively expensive.
And is the new prison adding beds, or are they just new beds? Right. So that won't help with overcrowding or.
It's a net kind of level deal. But I think a point to make back to Chris's points is, we're paying more for less people now on the staffing side, and a lot of that is built in overtime. I mean, if we could truly staff to the levels that we need to, it's hard to think about it. We may even save some money. So, but that, and one of the topics and points that we were making this week in budget hearings was, we're not alone in this. all of our surrounding states are kind of facing this same staffing crisis. Texas and Florida particularly have done some unique things that we may take a deep look at as far as trying to get those staffing levels back up. And I think that's a big step in the right direction as far as getting our corrections under control.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. McCampbell? Do you have
Yeah, I
anything?
think on a positive note, one of the things that I did here in budget hearings is we are now having having more rehabilitative efforts going on in the Department of Corrections. I know they are graduating their first class from the Perry County facility, and that facility is designed to take the people that really don't need to be in jail, but they need to be supervised, I guess would be more of a correct way of putting it. That facility, as well as some other community facilities, are starting to pay some dividends as well in terms of getting people back out into the community with skills and cutting down on the recidivism rate.
Okay, great. Representative Allman, do you have anything?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I have been to, I can think of 4 prisons I've been in. Back in the day, I used to be an attorney in the public defender's office, and prior to that, I did some criminal appointment work. So unfortunately, some of my clients went on to prison, and I would subsequently visit them there, dealing with follow-up issues. So I have been to several prisons. It's been a minute. I have not seen a parole hearing or visited that. On a little bit different note, in terms of criminal justice, the city of Tuscaloosa has asked our local legislative delegation to support its bill to allow the local police and fire pension board to convert from a privately funded and managed fund to one that would be managed by the retirement systems of Alabama. And so I expect we'll be filing that bill soon here, and I think our local delegation is all in favor of allowing them to do that. So that will be something that will hopefully happen soon, and then they can get started on all that entails in terms of conversion. But that will be something locally that will be happening.
So I assume they hope that will help with retention.
Yes.
Retention, probably. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Anything else? Any last comment on criminal justice, or have we driven that into the ground?
I'll just say I'm excited. I'm going to be on the Judiciary Committee this year, and Representative England also is on that committee. I expect I'll be learning a whole lot more about the criminal justice issues our state faces after listening to him week after week.
You say that now.
Great. Well, we look forward to hearing what is to come on that. All right, let's pivot to healthcare issues in Alabama. Again, we have Medicaid expansion. Is there an update on the status of that?
Why don't we rename that? It's called Comprehensive Healthcare Initiative.
I like that. I like it. And I think we're making progress towards it, to be honest with you.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'm waiting to see what my colleagues say.
Thank you for that intro there, Chris. No, I think there is conversation taking place, and I don't think that conversation has ever really stopped. I think it may be a new conversation now in that there's a potential of maybe seeing Alabama's version of what Medicaid expansion looks like, or and to AJ's point, I think it's going to be labeled as something else. But we talk about this every time, and have ever since Medicaid expansion was a thing. Is in Alabama, it's a constitutional issue, and this will be something that has to go to the people of the state, because all of the money that is created to pay for Medicaid expansion comes to us in the way of sales use tax and income tax. And those are all earmarked for education in the state of Alabama. So there's no way to get it from this basket over into this basket to actually pay for the services. So I think there may be some unique ways that we could look at that, but again, it's going to be the people of the state deciding that that's the route that they want to go. And there's a lot of conversation going on in and around that. And I think also, in addition to that, there is a lot of targeted investment in healthcare in general, whether it be mental health. AJ and I sat through a meeting yesterday where, and Gerald too, where there's a lot of targeted investment with some of these additional dollars that we have this year in those mental health areas and healthcare kind of as in general. So I think we're going to make some progress this year. I'm not sure that the Medicaid expansion conversation will mature to that level yet, but it hasn't gone away for sure.
So
the Medicaid program that we are involved in today, we have 1.3 million citizens of Alabama is getting some form of health care from our current program. So it's one that, like Kyle mentioned, that there's some tweaking and there's some things that probably we need to do and do better. But there's some certain things that you just got to be very conscious about, and that is that currently we are serving 1.3 million citizens out of about a 5.2 million citizens of Alabama. So we are serving those needs, and certainly I would have to agree with Chris and Cal that there may be one or two things that we can do differently, but it's a good program currently.
Well, and I think another point real quick is, one of the biggest increases in the general fund, both within mental health and Medicaid this year, is going to be the change in the FMAP. So we're going back to pre-pandemic levels in our FMAP match, which is going to take a lot of those additional dollars that we have right now in the general fund. So we, to me, that's just sustaining what we've got, but it, just in the general fund, that's an additional $70 million just by itself, just to keep it where it's at, going back to pre-pandemic levels.
So for those who don't know, what is FMAP?
That is the percentage of state match to the federal Medicaid program. So it and on paper it doesn't look like a big deal because it's changing, it's increasing back by a percent and a half, 2%, somewhere in that general area. But when you talk about the size and scope of Medicaid, that ends up this year representing about $70 million.
Okay.
I do want to point out though that there are industry members, hospitals, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and many others that are in the healthcare business that are working hard to try to help us fashion a way to do it in the most cost-effective way possible. And that's why I felt like we do have some positive movement in that direction. Because obviously, anytime you're going to do something like that, you're trying to find the best way to minimize the impact on the general fund while getting the biggest bang for your buck, right? So if we can minimize how much it's going to cost us, we'll get to a point where it won't be, when it becomes most cost effective, it'll be hard to say no at some point. Now, but I'm not being ridiculous here. I do understand that there is a cost associated with it, but in certain respects, over the last 4 or 5 years, Alabama has expanded Medicaid for children and so forth. So we have made more people eligible for it and covered them. So it's not a foreign concept to us. I think it's really just getting to a point where everyone is comfortable with the numbers. And hopefully that'll happen really soon. And again, we've got buy-in because a lot of our doctors and hospitals, they don't really like giving all this uncompensated care. And Medicaid is one way to make that, although it doesn't pay a lot in terms of how much the cost of the care is, it's something versus nothing. So
the other thing is that we don't have that uncompensated care. It's passed on to you and I and anybody else that has private or group insurance policies.
Yeah. So it will. Somebody's paying for it. So.
Hey, Chris. Chris, Kyle, essentially may help us on this one. Was that $8 billion from the feds that helped fund Alabama Medicaid? Did y'all see that number this morning or yesterday? Was it $8 billion that Alabama got?
I hadn't heard that one.
I didn't see it.
Well, listen, I mean, kind of the breakdown of the general fund, everything that comes into the general fund in totality is around $20 billion a year. We only appropriate a little over $2.5 billion of that. So, what we refer to as middle column money that goes directly to mental health or directly to Medicaid and those kinds of things that we really have control over. Gerald, it could be that number because about 65% of everything we allocate through the general fund is prisons and Medicaid. So we don't have a lot of dollars that are unencumbered to provide all the other services of the state beyond just those two big ticket items.
Well, if you got $8 billion, Gerald, you can let us know where that money is.
Oh man, yeah, I understand that, Chris. Yes, sir.
So you said that any additional funding for Medicaid is a constitutional issue.
So
So can you kind of explain the process? Just general, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but I'm curious sort of how that would play out.
So when we talk about Medicaid expansion and all the dollars that the groups will say would come to the state in the way of to pay for it, to offset the cost of it. All of those would be increases in a lot of staffing in places, those kinds of things, which in turn for the state means tax dollars in the way of sales and use tax and mainly income tax. And so they say basically if you're getting an extra $2 billion a year for healthcare, then that's going to matriculate it back through the system and create new tax dollars. Well, those tax dollars in Alabama, unlike any other state, are constitutionally bound to be spent only in education. And so therefore we would have to unearmark those dollars to be able to transfer them over to the general fund to pay for those services.
Okay. So then to make that happen, would that be a constitutional amendment that would go to vote?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So the bill would go through the legislature like a normal bill, probably, and there's obviously multiple ways to look at it, but at some point, in my opinion, you would have to get a constitutional amendment to the people of the state and allow them to vote on it.
Okay. Any differing views on that? Any additional comments, thoughts on how that
Yeah,
process?
let me just add, on top of what Kyle was speaking of, is that there's going to be some cost involved. So there's going to be another funding source that's got to be developed to pay for that as well.
Okay. All right. So piggybacking on healthcare, and you touched on it a little bit, but mental health specifically. And as you know, Tuscaloosa, we have a large mental health institution here. What, if any, plans are there to strengthen and expand the mental health care in Alabama? Are there any specifics that you see coming?
So I'll jump in real quick. So previous administration lack of foresight created a lot of opportunity for us to repair a lot of the problems that were created when we just unilaterally shut down facilities across the state. So one of the more positive things that the state of Alabama has done recently is recreate crisis centers. Spent a good bit of money on, I think Tuscaloosa is getting a crisis center. If we haven't already got one, Birmingham is getting one. I think there's one in North Alabama that's coming. So we're actually repairing a lot of the damage that was done under the Bentley administration, specifically to create crisis intervention centers, where one of the major gaps in our coverage was, if you had an immediate need, there was really nowhere else for you to go. It's like in Tuscaloosa County, you would end up in North Harbor, where likelihood is, or actually you probably may even end up arrested, where you'd be in a situation where you were not getting treated, you were just getting stabilized, and by the time you got released, you'd just be worse. So you got a crisis center that would actually treat you, help you sustain care, so you don't relapse, which is one of the major issues that we've had across the state, specifically here, for a long time. And also, Representative Allman mentioned in a local bill that we've got, another one is to create a fund where we're going to divert a little bit of money from our municipal court to dedicate it to more mental health care too. So City of Tuscaloosa is actually doing a fantastic job in terms of trying to find different ways to take care of those that are suffering from a mental health issue, crisis, or so forth. So, but we do have another problem that's overwhelming our system, and that is compensating group homes, and increasing their rates so they can pay their employees and also maintain some overhead. We're losing group homes because it's just not lucrative to do it anymore. It costs way more than the state gives. So we're going to, and we've had several people approach delegation members about increasing those numbers. I think Kyle has a little bit more information on that, because we've talked at length about that here recently.
Yeah, so that I think, again, back to the points that we were talking earlier, a huge staffing crisis when it comes to mental health, but it's up and down the line too. So it's from the top end all the way down to the bottom. And Chris was speaking about those reimbursements rates for group homes that are providing ID and DV services. They had a step up during COVID as well from federal funds that increased those rates. And basically what we were being told is we are barely sustaining at that level. If we go back to pre-COVID rates, we're out of business. We can't take care of those most vulnerable citizens. So I think there's going to be a huge push. It was in the budget request for mental health yesterday, to increase those even beyond that COVID rate that the federal guidelines set. So I think that will be a big investment. There is significant investment being made over at Taylor Hardin here in town to finish the expansion over there. Chris said that I think we're on our 5th or 6th crisis center. They've kind of set those up regionally so far, but I think there's additional ones to come. The one in Tuscaloosa is kind of sponsored, or Indian Rivers is handling that situation over there, if I'm not mistaken. So the state will build the facility, and then Indian Rivers will manage it. So big time focus on that, because as we talk about whether it be Medicaid or prisons, or every time we talk about one of those issues, mental health comes up in the conversation. So I think that the focus has shifted over there, and we're at the forefront of it, unfortunately, within the delegation here, because if there's such thing as a mental health capital of the state, it's here because we had all the facilities here at one time.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, let me say this as well, on top of what Chris and Kyle have mentioned as well, is that yesterday's budget hearings, we've heard that Pickens County Hospital that was closed, we're working and trying to get the funding to refit that facility for adolescents and children, because right now the Children's Hospital in Birmingham has a waiting list for mental disorders and for children and adolescents. So we're hoping that we can fulfill that need in the coming weeks, that you can see some positive things from that development with that facility in Pickens County. So that's going to be a positive thing.
And kind of piggybacking off that too, Chris, help me here a little bit. There was a waiting list of almost 4,000 people just 3 or 4 years ago waiting for services within the state. That number is down to around 1,500. So significant progress over I think that was within a 3-year period.
Good. Okay. So we're getting close to the end. I'm sure you're all happy about that. Get on with your evenings. But another area we wanted to touch on is the digital divide in Alabama, and what can be done to help close that gap. Is there any budget surplus money that can be used for that? Do you have any plans to help improve this huge gap that we have that really, it impacts people in all areas of their lives, right? Education, medicine, if you don't have access to good internet, you're really out of luck in so many other areas. So
that's why we can't see AJ tonight.
AJ's probably holding an antenna and a satellite dish in his hand right now.
I hate to joke about it, but you're 100% correct. There are all sorts of problems that we have in the state. I think there's been some consultants for the state that have estimated that somewhere between a $4 and $6 billion problem. We have made significant investments in it. Some of those that are just now kind of being realized over the last several years, whether it be ARPA 1 or I think you will see a big push for that in ARPA 2, having another investment, but also the Federal Infrastructure Fund allowed us to sink a lot of money in that. And so, yes, we're making strides, but it's a big problem.
Hey, look! He must have moved into a sweet spot in the house.
I will have you to know that I have just come off the road, and so now you can see me. You weren't going to see me otherwise.
We had a debate several years ago when one of the broadband initiatives came before the legislature, and I probably won't get this quote exactly right, but AJ went to the microphone and said, y'all talking about all this 5G stuff and, you know, next generation stuff. He said, we're just looking for AG.
Well, and I
We're
will say,
still looking for an AG too.
but right now though, and I think Kyle alluded to it, there's a rather large pot of federal money that's been dedicated to building out broadband infrastructure in several places across the country. And Alabama's probably close to getting, it's going to get $1 billion or so going forward to put some fiber in the ground in different places. It's a huge, but I mean, the problem isn't necessarily the resources as much as it is how you get the resources to people to get to who are going to actually put the fiber in the ground and build out the broadband. That's really a major issue because, again, you're still talking about a private business that has to go into these rural areas, and sometimes those costs are just unsustainable because, like, you can't that last mile to get to people's houses if there's not a large number of people that you're serving there. You almost lose money when you do it. So it's not necessarily the resources as much as it is how you get it to the folks and then making it worth their while too.
Well,
Let me add as well that the citizens of Alabama voted in the last election, November the 9th, on a constitutional amendment giving private companies to get involved with public monies, and that I think that will go a long way with that as well, getting private investments involved and to do this, because like Kyle mentioned a moment ago, that is a huge amount of money when you start looking at covering every corner of this state, and it's a major task, and certainly I think we have made great strides in it. I think the next billion dollars that's coming up in the I'm not real sure if we're going to have a special session or not, Kyle, Chris, Cynthia, but I'm thinking that may be a chance that we can push broadband. Of course, water and sewer and healthcare is going to be involved in that discussion as well. So we're on the right track to provide broadband services to rural Alabama. That's important.
Here I go slapping backs again, but I think during my tenure in the legislature, that may be one of the biggest accomplishments we've made, in that we already had a mechanism in place when all these monies started flowing in order to distribute these funds, and we were well on our way to providing those services then. Now, we were doing it with $30 million a year at that time, but we had already set up the process by which we were going to do that. So we were ahead of the game, ahead of most states when it came to that. And then as these federal dollars started flowing in, whether it be from ARPA, COVID, or federal infrastructure dollars, we were ahead of the game, well ahead of our peers.
So
that's right, and there's a map on the internet. You can go to the ADECA website and see a map and see the progress that Cal has alluded to.
Yeah, we can all go check the internet except AJ.
So is there money that would allow for more innovative solutions, thinking about sort of that last mile and how hard it is to get it to people where they're at, instead of fiber, using like a satellite network or something like that? Or does it have, is that considered infrastructure, or does it actually have to be like just fiber or something?
So right now, to that point, it is pretty much a hard line that they've kind of wrapped their head around. Now, I would like to push for it to be technology neutral, no matter what that technology is. I hate to keep making fun of AJ, but the most basic form of broadband is cell service, and we still have places in the state where you can't make a cell call. We've got schools that you can go into that there is no way you can get a cell signal in there. Not only is that a health and safety issue, but it's the most basic form of broadband. And I think if we're forward looking enough, 20 years from now, we may not need that line into the home because everything may be wireless. So I think we've got to broaden the scope of that as we move forward. But like I said, just the wired portion of that is a $4 to $6 billion problem. So we will definitely having those conversations, but I don't know exactly what that looks like, whether it is to incentivize, satellite services or those kinds of things. It becomes a little bit harder when you're not building actual infrastructure.
Hey, Cal, did Ken Boswell answer a question yesterday concerning satellite?
He was asked and said they were considering all options. So I don't think they've honed in. Again, it's not easy because they can't just invest in the infrastructure. So there's an ongoing expense to, whether to make it affordable or, however that is, because satellite's more expensive. It's becoming a better quality service. It's not quite to the level that everything else is wired wise, but it's awfully expensive.
Yeah. Okay, to wrap up,
let me say
yes.
something here concerning our delegation. We have 3 state senators and 7 House members, and I'll put our group in Tuscaloosa, who represents Tuscaloosa County, West Alabama, against any other delegation in this state. And we've got some quality individuals, and I appreciate each one of them very, very much. So
I don't know about those new guys though. They're not here tonight, so we can talk about them.
Right. Well, I and all of the league members really appreciate your attendance. Every year, you're very faithful, and we appreciate that. And you all seem to work well together. We have had others comment to us that they are amazed that we can hold this event, that they only wish they could get their delegations to do the same thing. So I really appreciate that.
Y'all can sell tickets to the Jefferson County one.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, we talk about these issues again every year, and we have these questions, but what do you see being different this year? So, the voters often are disenfranchised, I feel, because they don't really see things happening, from the legislature. It's kind of the same thing. You pass the budget, they don't really know what goes on. And so what do you see is going to be new or different this year that could help voters, connect, perhaps? And I'll start with Senator Allen.
Well, actually, it's that's a good question, but I do think that the citizens of Alabama, and there's, just to encourage your group and your organization. In my 29 years, I've missed one of these annual meetings, and your group, if all Alabamians had the heart and the background and knowledge as your group and your members, then that question that you asked I would be thinking to be obsolete, but I wish people would engage with their elected officials, from the school board on to the public safety officials, to the county elected officials, to the state house officials, to Congress, and to the White House, and because I would have to say there is a disconnect among some. I would have to agree with that, but at the same time, it's being able to communicate, be able to see what's taking place on the Senate floor, the House floor. It's on live stream. You can be involved with that, and at the same time, the numbers of the State House is there for anyone to make a call, and that's important. And in fact, I would love to give you my number right now. It's 334-261-0861 in Montgomery, and I would encourage men and women of all ages, Tuscaloosa in this state, to be active, be involved, ask those questions.
So Representative Almond, what do you see as perhaps being different this session from others?
Well, this is my first session, so the whole thing will be different for me. But actually, my second. I was there last year, but I have, of course, served on the Tuscaloosa City Council did for 16 years, so I'm not new to politics. And I would echo what Gerald has just said, and that is kudos to you and your organization here tonight for taking the time to put this on and work through all the difficult technological challenges, because it is important to be able to help people find different ways to connect and to learn and to be engaged. At the end of the day, it's all on us as individuals to be engaged and to be interested enough to dive into the issues and to learn for ourselves. I encourage people to not just read the headlines, but to sort of follow things along throughout the year to really get the bigger picture of what's going. There's so much going on just in Montgomery, and it is really hard to wrap your head around. Trust me, that's where I am right now. We have a third of the House are brand new House members, and the 4 years before that was another third. So I think about 2/3 of the House of Representatives have been serving 4 years or less. And I think that presents some challenges. I mean, some great opportunities for new ideas, new blood, but also some challenges for just sort of having people there who have some longevity and some knowledge, as these gentlemen here tonight do. And you can hear that just having been there a while. Takes a while to really start to understand all the things that are going on. So thank you for hosting tonight. I think it's I've learned a lot. I'll just say that.
All right, Representative McCampbell.
I too thank you for the hosting of tonight. And I also echo the desire that people really, if we could get all of our citizens to be engaged in the process, then we'd have a more informed citizenry. And, I think we would then be able to move more in a direction that the people really want us to go. So what do I see happening different this year? I don't know. I would hope that with all the technology, somehow we could engage more with the public in a manner that would allow them to actually be involved in if not just a daily process, but at least the weekly process throughout the session. So I would hope we'd have some people that would actually take time and learn how to tune in and hear what we are doing in Montgomery.
Okay, Representative Sal.
Did I hear AJ say he wanted to build a new state house?
I heard it.
Maybe I was hearing something.
Hear that. I did hear it.
No, what you did hear was, I need AG.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys each and every year. I think this is my eighth or ninth time to be able to come and join this forum. The engagement that everybody's kind of talked about makes our job easier when we get to Montgomery. So it's not a reactive kind of thing. If the more engagement we get, we can kind of get it out in front of some issues and those kinds of things. And I think, we are serving in a relationship business. And I think sometimes unfairly, especially within the delegation, but in the body as a whole, because of the politics in Washington, D.C., everybody just assumes that it's that way in Montgomery. And I will be the first to say that a lot of work goes into building those relationships across the aisle. I think more could be done. And if we can get to that point where we can interact with each other more, things would go a lot smoother. And I think we've made some progress, but we've got a little ways to go. And so that's what I would like to see as we move forward is, us being able to interact with each other more on a personal basis, get to know each other better. And I think that makes the political process a whole lot easier and better as well.
Okay. And Representative England.
Yeah, I'll just echo everyone's sentiment. I think I got like a 14-year streak going on this event. This is one of those events that I make sure that I attend. So, I mean, I really enjoy, and I also enjoy the relationships that we have in our Tuscaloosa delegation. And it's interesting. We've got 3 new members this year, Curtis Travis, Ron Bolton, and Bill Lamb. And I think they've integrated themselves rather seamlessly into our group. And I think that's just a testament to the fact that we're focused more on the relationships that we've built versus the partisanship and everything. As when it comes to Tuscaloosa issues, we're generally focused on fixing the problem when somebody approaches us about it. And also, I just want to agree with everybody else. Also, I think the biggest challenge going forward is going to be the new membership. Kyle alluded to it earlier. Just for an issue like gambling, for example, you actually have to kind of start over from scratch to a certain degree, because you've got to figure out when you got a third of the legislature was brand new, you got to completely start over and explain to those folks how the process works. And because it's a constitutional amendment, they have to participate. So I think the biggest challenge is going to be figuring out who's what's what their issues are, and what kind of legislator they think they want to be and how they fit into the process. So it's like Senator Allen said earlier, Gerald said earlier, we've got a fantastic delegation, and every year when we come to this event, we get to display how fantastic we are. Because trust me when I tell you, there are other delegations that do not get along at all. They fight about everything. And even when we disagree on an issue, we oftentimes know how to work through them and get to a solution. So, and I think our track record shows that. So again, just like everybody else said, thank you for putting on this event and having us. And I'm looking forward to next year.
Great. So thank you. And before we close, I have one, I guess I'll call it a public service announcement. A couple of you mentioned the live streaming of sessions. And so I'm going to try to get this right. So the League of Women Voters of Alabama has worked with the legislature and is going to offer live streaming through Allison at the alabamachannel.org. And they will all be saved. So the live streams will be recorded, saved, and you will be able to search them by keyword. So if you're looking for a specific bill when someone mentioned that, or if you're looking for when your representative spoke about something, you'll be able to search for that. It will come up. So you all could maybe use it as well if you'd like to, send that out.
That ain't gonna be good for everybody.
Yeah. So, but that is something that we have worked to try to help promote transparency and to educate voters about what is happening during the session. So we'll start off with just some sessions and maybe committees, I'm not sure, being recorded and saved into this system. And then we hope to expand it going forward. So that's something we're very excited about, but it's the alabamachannel.org is the website you can go to look for that. So thank you all. I really appreciate it, and good luck this session. And we will see you next year.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right.